Coach Phil Cunningham returns to Marching to Madness as he looks to build Louisiana Monroe back into a winning program. Cunningham was most recently the associate head coach and worked at Western Kentucky as the associate head coach as the Hilltoppers won the 2021 Conference USA regular season title and appeared in the Elite Eight. Don't forget, he knows the Sun Belt. Troy, the Trojans, Tournament Championship 2017, their second NCAA bid there in school history. Coach, welcome back.
Thank you, Ken. Great to be here.
Of course, yes. Now you're taking the Warhawks over, so discuss the transition from being the associate head coach last season to occupying the coach's chair as we look forward to the 25-26 campaign.
Well, Ken, I came down here last August. I was aware that Coach Richard was going to retire at the end of the season, and so I had great respect for Coach Richard when I was in the league with him. My 6 years at Troy, he was at ULM at the time. Had some of his best teams. In fact, the best team he had, they would have gone to the NCAA tournament had it not been for Chris Beard at Arkansas Little Rock that one year. The team he had beat him in the finals of the tournament. So just had tremendous respect for Coach Richard and had always enjoyed playing down here at ULM. And so it really worked out well for me because John Hartwell, who hired me at Troy when he was the athletic director at Troy, he left Troy and went to Utah State and eventually ended up back here at ULM about 2 years ago. So that was kind of the tie that brought me back here. And knowing my relationship with Coach Richard was a good one before I came back. But I wasn't guaranteed the job that I was going to get at the end of the season. But I knew, and John told me, if you're here, you're going to be in a better position. And fast forward to today, it worked out. And, 5 weeks ago, I got the job. And just spending a year here, Ken, was put me so far ahead of the curve. Just because I feel like I know the athletic department, I know the university a lot better, obviously, than I did this time last year. But I just think it helped me in so many ways. And now we're just trying to hit the ground running, trying to put together this new roster.
I saw 2 players from last season went into the transfer portal, and you had 5 seniors last season. So how have you seen this roster turnover during what's been the recruiting year?
Well, Ken, after the Pavia decision came out in January, we ended up really just having 1 senior.
Okay.
And he left, but basically we had some guys who had left the team in November for various personal reasons, and we finished the year with only 7, 8 scholarship players, only 5, 6 of them healthy, I think. So it ended up being almost a complete turnover. And so we brought back one young man who came off the bench as a young guy last year, Micah Castor. And then we're trying to bring back one more big kid, A.D. Diadu, who's trying to get one more year. We thought he had one for sure coming out of the Pavia decision because he had played junior college, but there's a little complication there with his clock. So we're trying to get that straight because we'd love to have him back. And we have one other player who may come back. So at most we'll have 3 out of 13 come back. So we're basically starting all over again. 2 players off last year's team going to a team within our division, Texas State. You see a lot of that these days that you never saw, when you and I were younger guys in this business, but because they've taken out the intra-conference transfer rules. But Jay, again, the only guys we have coming back, AD was a role player last year, played about played 15, 20 minutes a game coming off the bench, and Micah, the other guard we have coming back, he played minimal and played more toward the end of the year when he got an opportunity and played well, but. We're basically, again, we're starting from the scratch when it comes to this roster and building out kind of everything, building out what we project to be our starting lineup and our roster and our guys coming off the bench as well.
I know your offensive attack was totally not where you wanted it to be last season because the Warhawks only shot 40.7% from the floor. So how have you worked already, like from the ground level, to be able to move that forward?
Well, Ken, our big thing has always been, when I was at Troy and just anywhere I've been as assistant, I've tried to interject this opinion, but, shooting is critical. And that's just not me. That's everybody. I don't care what level of basketball, but when you get into college basketball, you've got to be able to stretch the floor. You've got to be able to shoot. So we apply that to recruiting. And what I mean by that is that our positions 1 through 4, the point guard, the two wings, and then the forward, who some people call a power forward, stretch four. We feel like those guys have to be able to stretch the floor and make threes. And so we study numbers when we're dealing with the transfer portal. We study numbers to see what kind of percentage they shot at their previous school. And then we study the video. I'm a big believer in, what does their shot look like? Do they have a good, you may have a guy who's got a great looking stroke and he's just struggling from the 3-point line for whatever reason. And sometimes we'll take more of a gamble with a guy like that who doesn't have the proven numbers. But back to what my original point, we want to recruit guys who can all shoot at those positions. Our center, he doesn't necessarily have to shoot. If he can shoot threes, that just helps you stretch the floor a little more. But our 1 through 4, we want to recruit guys who can all shoot it or have the potential to shoot in the 30s from the 3-point line. So that's the most immediate need. Answering your question is we've got to be able to shoot the ball better, because that opens up the floor to get those twos better. If you can't shoot threes, those twos get a lot more difficult.
Got a center, for example, that's an excellent passer, that'll open those threes up as well, because you can go through the middle to the other side.
Right. That seems to be a big trend in college basketball now. And we kind of follow the NBA and always college basketball always has, and I think always will. But that's, naturally a lot of people call that the Zoom concept, where the center is now at the top of the key and kind of handling the ball. And that's recruiting. I mean, as you know, with centers, they're not always those type of ball handlers. They're not always those kind of passers. They're becoming more of a norm as we move forward in this day and age in basketball, because of guys like Jokic, and you see it more. And so, we have one of our centers, our returning center. If he gets that year back, he has that kind of ability. And some of the other guys we're recruiting also have that type of ability.
As you look at summer workouts now, what are key features that will stimulate players to improve their own court skills and become more versatile?
Well, Ken, it's interesting you say that, because we're just coming out of a recruiting year, period. It went dead this morning.
Sure.
The 10-day dead period started, so no on-campus recruiting for at least 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
But we talk about that in all these recruiting meetings we have, when we're having that final session where we're talking about basketball, and we emphasize, how important player development is to us. Because as you mentioned, you referenced the summer workouts. Well, the NCAA rule is we only get 4 hours on the court with them. I wish, if they would change one rule, I wish they would change that and extend that time. When I started in this business, we had 0 hours. Now we're up to 4. We have 4 hours in the weight room with the strength coach, 4 hours on the court with the full-time coaches. So we only have eight hours mandatory times. It leaves them a lot of free time in the summer where we could be doing more things to help them get better and help them improve our team, where I don't think we'd be overwhelming them from a time standpoint. I know originally why the NCAA put that in, to avoid coaches just having guys in the gym all the time. But now they seem to want to be in the gym, and I wish we'd change that rule. But back to your question, here's a critical piece that maybe the common fan doesn't understand, but a critical piece on any college basketball staff is, who are your grad assistants? Because the grad assistant, their title is a grad assistant manager, so they're not labeled as a coach, and they don't have to abide by the time limitations. They can be in the gym with the guys that they and the managers can be in the gym with the guys unlimited if they want to. So I think it's really critical for us to create an environment and a culture where guys are in the gym on their own. We have to continuously hammer that to our players. Don't just ask them, did you go to the gym yesterday? Don't just do it verbally. Make sure you're creating that environment. What I mean by that is, make sure that court's available. Make sure that grad assistant is on the court, where those players know, hey, I can go to the court right now and maybe not only get on that shooting machine and get some shots up, but there's going to be a grad assistant and some managers in there to put me through a workout. So we're all about creating that environment of player development. I don't think we're the only ones doing that. I think everybody does to a certain extent, but we're gonna hammer it, because we're not going to be at the top of the chain in the Sun Belt in some areas, but we have to be at the top of the chain when it comes to player development.
Player development, that sounds really good. I enjoy watching how that happens and stuff. It's also probably a focal point of your culture now.
Has to be. It has to be for us. I mean, we're gonna do it that way. We're gonna recruit young. Well, it's amazing how recruiting has changed, and just in the last 5 weeks, where I became the head coach, and initially I said, guys, I was telling our staff, I said we can't be too young. We have to avoid being too young. And then what I've seen over the last 5 weeks is this isn't rocket science, but your NIL budget determines whether you're young or old because it's very obvious it's tough to get an experienced player at our level. If you're going to have an experienced player who's produced at the Division I level, you better have a big time NIL budget within your league. I'm not saying compared to Florida or Kentucky or Duke or something like that. I'm saying within your league, you better have a really, really one of the highest NIL budgets. And you can look around our league, and I watch who's signing where, and I can kind of tell, okay, they've got some money because they're able to go out and get that guy who's produced at the Division I level. Because obviously they're going to cost you more NIL. We're not in that boat. So what we have to do, we have to go find maybe some hidden type gems out there as good as we can find. And then we've gone young. We're gonna go with some young guys. We're going to go with a couple unproven guys that got recruited really highly. But for the most part, I would characterize what we're doing as recruiting young. And with that in mind, the summer and then the month of September and what we do in the preseason starting in October is just it's instrumental to what our season is going to look like in January and February when we get into league play.
What is your philosophy on how to build now the up-tempo offense, and how many options do you give your point guard as an offensive leader?
Well, we want to play fast after a miss, meaning, if you think about it from a numbers standpoint, if you're a good defensive team, then you should be holding your opponents to the low 40s in overall field goal percentages. So that means that the majority of your possessions should come after a miss or after you create a turnover. Now, there are going to be occasions where the ball goes out of bounds. Maybe there's a violation, an offensive foul, and you take the ball out and come up against a set defense. But when you're getting stops, then you're coming in transition against a defense that's not set yet. So we want to play really fast after a miss. We want our point guard to handle the ball, but we want our wings to handle it. We'd like to have a four who can rebound and bring it himself, kind of like a point forward. That'll be dictated by the roster we put together. But we want to play fast and we want to play in the middle of the floor. And what we want to do, Ken, is, as I call it, we want to get three to the baseline. We want to fill those two corners with shooters, and then we want to get our first big out to run to the rim and kind of get this floor spread out. And then we want to play through the trailer, meaning whoever handles the ball, the point guard or maybe one of the wings, comes down. And then we have our trail coming right in the middle of the floor and play through him in a ball screen, maybe what we call a get, where you pitch the ball to him and you pitch it back. But we want to play fast. We want to advance the ball whenever there's an opportunity to do that. We don't want to be one of those teams where on a miss, we're slowing down and we're getting into a play that I call from the bench. And while I'm doing that, and while our players are thinking, okay, what play are we going to run? The defense is getting set and they're dug in, and now we're going against a dug in defense that wasn't there 3-4 seconds ago coming off that miss. So we want to play fast. We want to give our point guard a lot of freedom and a lot of opportunity to make plays, and then and go from there. And then obviously on a made basket or a dead ball when it's a walk up, that's different. You have to have some kind of structure. Are you going to run set plays? Are you going to run motion offense? But that's different because the defense is back; they're dug in. But I think the biggest, the best way to answer your question is we're going to play fast after a miss, and our plan is to be good enough defensively to create a lot of those opportunities to play off a miss and go against a defense that hadn't been set yet.
The Sun Belt Conference is a strong league. What are ways you build the Warhawks into being able to compete and rise now in that league?
Well, Ken, it's a great question because it's kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. Our roster building right now, it's all, let's just be real, it's all NIL driven. And you've got to have it. We're not like the SEC or the Big 12 or the ACC, but in the Sun Belt, you better be in the game is the term I use. You better be in the game when it comes to NIL, because if you're not, you're going to get left behind. So I think everybody's building differently right now, and I think it really, and this may sound too simple, but it just depends on how much how much budget you have in your NIL. You know, can you go out and get experienced players? You know, do you have to dig and dig and dig and try to find, to try to find players who you can get to come in, thinking that they're looking at this as an opportunity to get on the floor and maybe they'll advance in their career. The analogy I'm using in recruiting, and I believe this to my 100% in my heart, we're like the European professional basketball leagues now, where those guys go in, they start at a lower level, and if they play well, they move up. And I think college basketball is going to be that. And I think as the coaches, we have to accept that. Eventually, the fans will have to accept that at this level. But the guys are gonna play well, and it's not just me saying that. Just look at the history of our league just in the last 5, 6 weeks, and what the players with eligibility left who have played well and what they've done moving up the ladder. And it's just going to happen. And I think everybody's building differently. I told you earlier, we're kind of going the young route, mixing in as much experience as we can from different sources. But we're going to do it that way. I've seen there's 14 teams in this league, so there's going to be a variety of ways that people build rosters, just as there's a variety of ways that coaches play. And it's a fascinating time because Ken, we're going to all sit back and in 2 or 3 years from now evaluate how each coach, how each university, how each athletic department chose to take on this new model in recruiting, which is NIL driven.
Coach Phil Cunningham, always enjoy catching up with Coach, talking basketball, and now seeing what's up at ULM. Coach, it's a pleasure.
Ken, thank you, man. It's always great to be on here with you. It's been a pleasure to know you all these years, all the way back from those SEC tournaments we used to go to all the time. But
Yeah.
it's great to see you still going at it, and your passion for basketball has always been second to none. And just appreciate what you do for college basketball, and particularly at this level. You're a huge advocate for what I call mid-major basketball, and it means a lot to us, the guys who are on the ground every day in this game.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and I enjoy it so much.